Hey friends, and welcome back to another episode of Entitled People. We got some more Reddit stories to check out today, so be sure to like and subscribe, and let's get into it, guys. Am I the a-hole for calling the cops due to a child being left unattended? For context, I'm 17 and generally clueless. I live in an apartment-dominated area. This was the first time in my life when I called the cops. Tonight at about 3 a.m., I kept hearing a little kid yelling for his mom and dad, sobbing uncontrollably. I looked outside to see this tiny child leaning over the dangerously open window on the 3rd floor of the building adjacent to mine. After about 30 minutes of contemplating, waiting to see if there was anybody else with him, I finally went outside to see what was going on. I got to speak to the kid and found out that he is 5. Both of his parents left him alone, taking the keys with them. I tried to calm him down as best as I could and dialed 112. After 10 minutes of nervously speaking to the operator and calming the kid down in between, the cops finally showed up. 2 cop cars, a fire truck, and an ambulance. I explained everything as best as I could and gave them my information. One of them talks to the kid and I stand by in case they need anything from me. From a distance, I could see a woman speed walking towards me, asking me what's going on. The policeman talking to the kid asks her 3 things. 1. Do you live here? 2. What floor do you live on? 3. Are you the child's mother? Turns out, yes, she is the child's mother. The woman then turns back to me asking if I called them, and me being quite literally the only person awake and on those streets at 3 in the morning, I said yes. She starts panicking and asking me why I would do that. Why is her kid any of my business? Talking about how I called the cops for nothing. At which point, one of the female officers, an absolute sweetheart, told me that I can return home, now that the mom is here. And so I left. I watched from the window as the cop cars left one by one. I am now sitting in my bed wondering if it was truly wrong of me to call the police in this situation. The child cried out for a full hour. Am I the a-hole? Not at all, OP. You definitely did exactly what any concerned person should do. You don't need to know all the exact details about what's going on with the situation, just that you saw a kid in distress and there were no parents around, and even after giving it a full hour and the kid was still crying out the window, I think that's sufficient time to decide to call the cops. No parent is going to be happy about getting the cops called over this, so don't let their own reaction make you question your decision. You made the right choice. Someone in the comments says this: not the a-hole. I am a mandated reporter, and would have had to report the situation if I had been there. Piece of advice though, I have had to do several calls. I make it a policy to say I can neither confirm nor deny that I made the call should a parent ask. In general, if a parent is asking if you called, they don't want to thank you. Ex lies during divorce to have me jailed, and instead he is left with remorse. I was getting divorced in the early 90s. My ex was pissed that I was divorcing him. I owned the house prior to the marriage, so he moved out. But he broke back in and tore up all kinds of things. Tore up my jewelry, my clothes, he cut holes in all of them, etc. I couldn't prove it, but of course it was him. When we went to divorce court, he gave the judge a 2-page list of things that he supposedly brought to the house with him prior to the marriage that I refused to return. My attorney showed me the list and it was stuff that he never owned in the first place. He totally wanted me thrown in jail for contempt of court. My alternative ways to pay like $2,000, and I wasn't about to do that. I am opted for jail, but my friends kept telling me to just pay it. I refused. 2 days before I was about to appear in court, a girlfriend of mine asked if she could see the list. Sure. She noted that things he said were there didn't give much, if any, of a description. For example, he says there's a gun. He didn't say what kind of gun. He said there was a computer, and he didn't say what kind of computer, and so on. Her point was that if I went around and bought everything on the list, it would probably cost me about $200, and that was worth staying out of jail. I agreed, knowing it would also be worth him being livid that his plan didn't work. So I made a game of it. I went around to pawn shops and resale stores, and I told whoever was in charge that I was on a scavenger hunt, and I briefly explained what was going on. They all loved the idea, and helped me get through my list rather quickly. Here are some lovely examples of what was boxed up for him. Gun, an old rusty cap gun. Screwdriver set, same, old and rusty. Clothing, Goodwill, horrid stuff. Bust/statue, made one myself from clay. Knives, old and rusty. camping gear, an old pan, matches, and a tiny tarp. And one of my favorites that I remember was he said he had a Monopoly game. So I sent him a Goodwill find without any of the pieces, just the board. I wish I could remember everything that we got. It was so much fun when we got home. We had to videotape boxing them all up and going through the items one by one. My attorney told the judge that I had found the attic, and I just hadn't seen it before. So sorry. The judge told my attorney to simply drop the box off at his attorney's office, and that the divorce was final. My only regret is not being able to see his face when he opened up that box of garbage, and there was nothing he could say because he made the stuff up in the first place. It's been 30 years and I still get joy thinking about it. Is it illegal for me to pick up trash around my neighborhood? I live in upstate New York. I walk my dog every day, and during our walk I bring a reusable fabric tote bag and a garden glove to pick up loose trash on the street and sidewalk. I've been doing this for over a year now, and many people in the neighborhood have thanked me when they see me doing it. A few people who walk through the neighborhood have seen me doing this, and mentioned to me how they notice the difference I make. I enjoy doing this because it's one way for me to make a small yet noticeable difference in my community. Today as I was walking, I saw a police car, rare to see in the neighborhood I was in. I didn't think too much of this and kept walking. He flashed his lights once at me and I stopped to look. The police officer in the passenger seat asked what I was doing, and asked for ID. He then said he had been getting several complaints about me and my suspicious activity. I told him I was just walking my dog, and I didn't have ID on me since I didn't need it to walk my dog. The cop told me that I did need my ID on me, as well as proof that my dog is licensed with the city and vaccinated. I told him my dog has a city tag and rabies tag on his collar, and that I probably have his other vaccinations documented in an email from the vet on my phone. The cop shifted the conversation and asked what the bag I had over my shoulder was for and what the glove was for, and I told him that it's for trash that I pick up when I walk my dog. The cop plainly said, "You can't do that." I asked for clarification on what he was talking about, and he said the city prohibits trash rummaging, and that I could be charged with trespassing if I were to ever go onto someone's yard, even to pick up trash. I told him I don't walk on people's yards, and that the trash I pick up is from the road and sidewalk. The cop clarified that entering in a public space with intent to take something is considered trespassing. I've never heard of this, so I didn't push it. The cop told me to not pick up trash going forward, and said he was not going to cite me for not having my ID or my dog's proof of vaccination, / that I have a license for him, but that he could cite me for that plus trespassing, and that he could take me in and send my dog to the shelter if he wanted to. The cop said all this as if he was being nice by just letting me off with a warning. Am I in trouble for ejecting squatters from my mom's home? My mom has been in the hospital for a week and a half. She's in her 90s and had a medical incident. She'll recover, but she needs to be in the hospital for a bit longer. Got a call from a neighbor of my mom, who's also a longtime family friend, about some people in my mom's house. Yesterday I went down there in the morning, and found that 2 days prior they had showed up and managed to get access to the house. I probably forgot to lock a door after the ambulance left, and mom keeps spare keys hanging in the kitchen, so they were able to lock up. I decided that rather than call the cops and wait around for who knows how long, I'd just go in. I have a key as well after all. Maybe not the best decision, but I was worried that they would steal some of my mom's jewelry or other valuables. After I entered, I found a couple still asleep on my mom's bed. Told them to leave, and they tried to lie and say they were renting the place. We argued about that, and it dissolved into accusations of racism, and me calling them bums and thieves just trying to steal from my mom, and I will admit I lost my temper there. But I didn't throw the first punch, he did. We then wrestled for a few minutes before I got the upper hand and managed to take him to the ground. I then drug him out of the house, and started grabbing stuff that was not my mom's and tossing it out the door. That was when they called the cops. The police arrived about a half hour later after I had gotten all their stuff out, and they began questioning everyone. The police wouldn't let them back in the house, but told me that I should have let them handle it. And when I asked if I was in trouble, they wouldn't say one way or the other. I'm just wondering if you think I'm gonna get legal ramifications from all this. The main reason I went in like I did was I've seen the years-long fights that can arise from these things, and how much theft and damage can be done to the property. And a commenter sums it up pretty well. They said, OP needs to realize this is what happened. He had no knowledge of the squatters, but concern had been raised about his family's property. He went to check on his mother's house while she was out. In the course of that, this is when he discovered intruders. They attacked him and he defended himself. And when you put it that way, I find it very unlikely that OP would have to deal with any kind of legal repercussions for the way that he dealt with it. My manager tried to give me man advice about growing a bone when being sexually harassed. Now he's fired. I had been going back and forth with my manager because I was trying to transfer out of his store and needed his approval for a transfer to happen. Part of why I needed to transfer was because of sexual harassment from a supervisor. I made the sexual harassment report a few weeks prior and called him pleading the transfer to be expedited. He gave me a lecture about how I needed to grow up and mature, that as a young adult, I need to learn from this experience. Go and get f***ed. The whole time I was trying so hard to be passive and sweet and nice. I'm not the type of person who likes fighting. I figure, kiss up until I'm out of that stupid location and I can move on. Not my job, not my problem once I can get out. The entire time I knew that he didn't file the report of the sexual harassment, along with other proof of retaliation since the report, including the supervisor lying about me, trying to get me fired when I had proof he was lying. This is a fireable offense for him. But when he tried to give me life advice as if he was my father, the condescending tone was my limit. The next day I met the district manager and he got fired. And that's all for today. Thank you for watching. Be sure to drop a like, I'd really appreciate it. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel for more. So take care, I'll see you next time.